Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to dive into the best of the rest from our top 50 prospects countdown. As is the case every year, there are always a handful of players that might get one or two votes from us, but don't have enough points to get onto the overall top 50. We want to make sure we recognize those players. And we're going to do that in tonight's episode, which is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Now, before we dive into the topic of tonight's episode, just got to reflect on the appearance from Steve Molesky, which aired earlier this week. And if you were watching live, you just saw it end a moment ago. We've obviously been reading Steve's work for a long time, but we just now had a chance to have him on for the first time. And I think it's safe to say, guys, that was a really fun interview.
Yeah, it was like I was telling him at the end there, like, he kind of fits our vibe a lot because he's glass half full rather than glass half empty, which I feel like 90% of sports fandom in general, not even just Orioles fans. So I think we tend to be a little more looking at the positive than the negative. And yeah, gosh, I've been reading his articles since I can even remember. So yeah, it was really cool. And I'm glad we finally made it happen.
I greatly appreciated the optimism. As we're sitting here in early March on the dawn of a new season, I'm so sick and tired of what the Orioles should but did not do this offseason. It was very refreshing. I felt like at the end of that, there's only one thing left to do, like win the whole damn thing at this point after that speech that he gave at the end there. It is refreshing to hear somebody talk like that, especially when you're living on social media all the time and you see nothing but the negativity. Like these are our guys out there on that field that we're watching sometimes in spring training when we do get a video feed. But those are our guys, and there's no reason to look back at the offseason and what didn't happen. Like this is the team that's going to go into battle for the most part, and I'm pretty stoked for what this upcoming season is going to hold. And yeah, if you're not already, go subscribe to Steve's Substack.
Absolutely, yeah. I think enjoy competitive winning baseball in Baltimore. Just enjoy it while it's here. Don't worry about what is not happening. Yeah, I like that message.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And now we'll get into the best of the rest from our top 50 list. We had our top 50 countdown drop last week. Of course, you remember our Patreon community. It gradually rolled out over the course of about 6 to 8 weeks. But for those of you who listen to on the main feed, that episode dropped last week. If you hadn't had a chance to listen to it, go back and listen to it after this episode. On this show, we're going to dive into the players who just missed the list. Now, this is important for us to get across because sometimes these players jump onto the top 50 during the offseason if there's a trade, as has been the case the last couple of off seasons, although that didn't happen this year. But it's also a useful snapshot of the players that you should have your eye on going into 2025 because they could, in theory, stand to rise really far up the rankings. Or in some cases, maybe they're guys coming off of tough years that have to do something to reestablish themselves a little bit in 2025. And we'll start off with two players who appeared at the number 46 spot on two of our individual lists. And that is infielder Felix Amparo, who I had on my personal top 50, and outfielder Nate George, who also ranked 46, but on Nick's list. So, Nick, I'm going to start with you because you've written a lot about George since last year's draft. And I know that you're high on him. You've talked about it before on the show, and you've written about it at Substack. There's a lot of intriguing tools here. There's a lot to be excited about. And you like what you see enough that you went ahead and you put him on your personal top 50.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I just felt like he was honestly probably one of the hardest prospects to rank just because he's this high school pick. He's from Illinois high school ranks. He's a cold weather guy. I don't believe he was like massive in the travel circuit So the showcase circuit, whatever it is. But the Orioles gave him a pretty big signing bonus, almost $500,000. And he's got speed and power in his profile. This is a kid who just literally walked onto a track and won like multiple state titles in track. He's that athletic. So he's got the speed, he's got the power. I think in high school he was posting exit velos of like 104, 105. I like he's got the training videos up on Instagram in the off season. Kid's jacked. So it's just as a 16th round pick. I forget which round they drafted him in, but as a later round pick in the high school pick, like this is the perfect type of prospect to take a big swing on. If he doesn't pan out, I mean, he was drafted near the end of the draft. You're not really expecting much out of him, but his ceiling is enormously high, and it's really fun to dream about what kind of prospect he can become. So that's what made it hard for me to figure out where do I rank him. And I figured he's got to be in the top 50 on my personal list. That's why I threw him there near the back. If he comes out hot in the FCL, of course, we'll move him up. But there's a lot to like here with Nate George. It's just a matter of, no one's really seen any of it before. So it's kind of just a wait and see approach there.
Yeah, that's why I didn't have him on my personal top 50. He's clearly on the radar. Same with Braylon Whitaker. Same with anyone that they're going to take out of high school and give a nice bonus to. That's like red alert. Like they like this kid, obviously. So yeah, I think just want to see it in action, or quote unquote, see it in action see the stat line, at least in the FCL. But yeah, he's got the tools. It's just, I feel like there was kind of like some ridiculously high evaluations of him after the draft, and then some that were like kind of a little bit dismissive. So I don't know. Let's see it in action, and hopefully it all works out. Yeah, I'm a fan. I like all these high school kids, and I want to see what they can do.
In terms of pure athleticism, I already know that I like Nate George as a prospect, because it seems like I'm going to stop short of calling him a 5-tool player, but it seems like there's a little bit of everything in his skill set to make him interesting. I had him just outside my personal top 50, and ultimately the reason that I didn't include him is that we haven't seen him play professionally, and that's only a small part of it. But the larger issue for me is, as Nick said, he's coming from a cold weather state, and he was a multi-sport athlete in high school, which is great, but it also raises the question of, is he a little bit raw compared to, say, a guy like DJ Layton, who a good athletic player, but had a little bit more exposure on the summer showcase circuit and has some clear card-carrying skills that he brings in to the professional level right now. So I do think, though, that with a good season in the FCL, George is easily going to be inside the top 40 of this list by this time next year, if not by the summer, maybe even higher.
And one more note on George. I can't remember where it was, but the college he was committed to, I feel like he was committed to a bigger school and then decommitted and then had committed again to a much smaller school, I think somewhere in Florida. And so that was another thing, like, okay, this kid is going to like a mid-major or like bottom tier D1 program. It may not even been a D1 program. I honestly cannot remember. But like, why then are the Orioles giving him $500,000 signing bonus here at this point? Like, did it really take that much to convince this kid not to go to whatever random school he was about to go to? It's something just, I don't know. There is a lot that just doesn't line up, doesn't make sense here. But I'm just going to trust the Orioles' evaluations and say, yeah, he's completely raw. We know literally nothing about him as far as his play in the field. But I'm going to trust the Orioles, and that's why I'm just super intrigued to see who the heck he is.
Get an Uber athlete in on this development system, and I like our chances to make something happen.
I'll go down to Felix Amparo, who, as I mentioned, was 46 on my list. Amparo was signed by the Orioles as an international free agent in 2023, and he made his debut in the DSL that summer and put up kind of middling numbers. And he repeated there last year and improved in just about every area. And to give a scouting report on Amparo, he packs a lot of power into a relatively small frame. He's listed at 5'10", 180 pounds, but last year he belted 6 home runs while posting a 132 WRC plus in a Dominican Summer League. He also runs well. He's put up good stolen base totals in each of the last 2 seasons, including 24 last year. The 2 areas where he really can stand to improve his game are the walks. Now, his walk percentage did jump by 3 points this past year, but still only brought him up to about 6%. The good news is that the strikeouts came down significantly in the process. The other thing, too, is that while he has some defensive versatility, he's going to have to hit, and it's almost going to have to go on kind of a Connor Norby track, because right now he's playing primarily second, first, and third, and the defense at third base has not been good. And you should take errors with a huge grain of salt in the minor leagues, but you can look at that and you can tell that Amparo's defense at the hot corner has been a little rough over the last couple of years, and that he's probably going to end up on the right side of the infield. But when you have that kind of power for being as young as Amparo is, and you mix in the speed with that, and not to mention the cut that he made to his strikeouts, there's enough here that I'm intrigued to think that he at least represents the next tier of younger up-the-middle prospects behind guys like Emilio Sanchez, who are further up the list.
Yeah, looking at his strikeout rate, 8.2%. Like, come on. And this is clearly a guy who's aggressive in the box, and he batted .313, and you would think, oh, he must have been lucky with balls in play. No, it's .304. That's pretty much right around average. So clearly this kid can hit. And honestly, we don't have many first base prospects. If he can't just stand at second base or third base, who cares? First base DH type, he's still probably, he's 19, 4 or 5 years away if everything goes well. So, yeah, I like it. I like him a lot. And, yeah, his numbers really, really improved. I just remember looking at the box scores. We're looking for the Elvin Garcias of the world. We're looking for the Jordan Sanchez of the world. And not Edwin Amparo, Felix Amparo every day was just like 2 for 4, 1 for 3, just seemed like constantly hitting for power in the DSL at 18 years old. And you're got a 190 isolated slugging percentage. That's pretty damn good. So yeah, maybe not the second base / shortstop that he was signed to be, but if he's going to hit like this, I think you'll find room for him somewhere.
Yeah, not the Amparo guys, not related. Just to note, yeah, the strikeout rate drop was pretty enormous. He, repeating the DSL, it's fine if they do that. They go to Northwest Florida State College to Eastern Illinois for Nate George. Yeah. Again, it's why he's so intriguing though. Why did the Orioles give him so much money? But with Felix Amparo, yeah, the repeating DSL, so yeah, he's a little bit older for the level, repeating it, but I like the dip in strikeout rate from 19% to 8%, the swinging strike rate from 32% to 15%, and the contact rate from 57 to 78%, and 0 home runs to 6 home runs. So I like that. That, in my mind, keeps him very intriguing, and he could see limited time in the FCO if he starts out hot and be in Delmarva pretty quickly and finish as still a 19-year-old. I don't know what his birthday is actually, but still finish as a 19-year-old, maybe young 20-year-old, playing well in Delmarva, setting himself up pretty well for
just
2026.
Turned 19 less than a week ago.
Perfect. So you could still end the year as a 19-year-old in high A, like all of his peers did last year, Thomas Sosa, Estrada, Arias, etc. So yeah, interesting guy that I'm excited to get our eyes on for the first time this year.
Also, 39 stolen bases in 45 attempts in just over 100 games played. So another, if not speedster, then at least a guy who's willing to run.
As I mentioned at the top of the show, sometimes you have to look at this section of the list to figure out, okay, who has fallen off a little bit? Because there are some players here that were consensus, not just top 50, but kind of pushing top 30 consideration this time last year, who have dropped off for various reasons in 2025. And 2 of them ranked 47th on our individual list. And one of them was outfielder Brylan Tavera, who was on Bob's list, while I had right-hander Justin Armbruster in that spot on my list. And I want to start with Tavera, who, as part of the 2022 International Free Agent class, was given a then franchise record $1.7 million signing bonus. His first couple of years in pro ball were not eye-popping stats, but he was at least a steady producer, moving up the farm system at about a level a year. And then he got to Delmarva last year, and although he battled injuries, was not good at the plate when healthy, and ultimately appeared in just 87 games, hitting 173 with a 297 on-base percentage and a WRC plus of 65. I saw Tavera, and I'll get into this in a little bit. I saw Tavera towards the end of the year, and I do think there are some reasons to be hopeful, even though he didn't make my personal top 50. So let's start there, Bob. Tavera's struggles, I just highlighted them, but overall, there's still an interesting skill set here. What led to you putting him on your top 50?
2024 is a wash. I don't think there's really anything positive you could honestly take out of it. He was battling injuries. When he was healthy, he was not performing at all. Didn't look good, honestly. But he did cut down the swinging strike percentage a little bit. And I just think the fact that he's still at least the biggest or second biggest signing bonus they've ever given to one of these kids, to me, and I think we've heard behind the scenes that there was a lot to like there with the athleticism. I'm just giving him another year to try to bounce back. And I just didn't see, and maybe I should have, and maybe he'll drop off soon, but I just didn't see any reason to, or anybody who was going to push him completely off the list for me. I just think there's clearly some upside there, or else, like, he's got all the tools. He's got the speed. He was caught stealing more than you would like. He's shown power in the past. In the FCL, he had 4 home runs in 35 games with 5 doubles. Like, that's not terrible. I think the strikeout percentage was good in 2023 in the complex. 117 WRC plus. I don't want it to immediately think of Michael Hernandez and put him in the same box as Michael Hernandez kind of ended up in. So I'm just basically give him another chance to see what he can do.
I definitely skewed more towards Michael Hernandez here, just because. But I do think I pulled the trigger a little too quick there with Tavera, because he's not on my top 50. I don't think he was, but I still am very intrigued by him, just because actually the reason why, last year was a wash is because he had a shoulder injury. So that's why he spent a big chunk of that time on the IL. I'm pretty sure it was a shoulder injury, just the one, but like, that's going to zap a ton out of you. So I give him the benefit of the doubt. I do know he just turned 20 like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I remember the Orioles player development tweeting that out. I think that's also another sign too, that I don't know if it means anything or not, but like, they don't wish happy birthday to everybody. So clearly someone in the organization was just like, hey, this is a guy we like, wish him happy birthday on social media. As stupid as that sounds, that's just something that I keep in the back of my mind. But yeah, I think the shoulder injury just zapped everything from him last year. And so I'll give him another shot. He did show improvements when he went from the DSL to the FCL. If you look at a lot of those numbers there, he improved in a lot of different areas. So he was definitely trending up before the injury. Let's see what he can do. Give him, again, just turned 20. So if he's, 2-3 months into the season and he's a below league average bat, and there's no reports of an injury, then I'm going to be super skeptical. But if he's showing improvements in certain areas, if he's got a little bit of pop 2 months into the year, it's not do or die this year, but he's certainly a guy that I think you definitely worth paying attention to when he repeats Delmarva this year.
Yeah, I just wonder if cold weather for the first time, slow start, gets an injury relatively early, if maybe he just let things spiral and it just got away from him. So let's see what happens.
Tavera was close to making my top 50. He was in consideration for a spot towards the very, very back of the list, but I ultimately just didn't pull the trigger on it because there were some players that I liked a little bit better. I did get a chance to see him late last year at Delmarva, and I thought by that point, and this is late August, he looked pretty comfortable in the box, good line drive stroke. So what I'm hoping we'll see is that, A, he's healthy and that the shoulder is cleaned up, and we don't know how it was feeling when he was actually playing. This could have been something that was hindering him all year or for most of the year. So hopefully the shoulder is good. He's got a clean bill of health, and he's able to go to Delmarva and really tap into some of the things we saw with his bat in the FCL a couple of years ago. Seemed like the power was coming along at that point. He's generally had good walk to strikeout numbers at every level he's played at. So that's another reason to be optimistic. One thing I really want to learn more about this year, if he is healthy, is what the Orioles see for him defensively, because we know that if he's going to end up on a corner, that puts a lot more pressure on the bat to develop. But if there is a thought that he could stick in center field, as some reports suggested early on in his career, then there's another reason to be optimistic about what he could do going forward. I'll jump now to Justin Armbruster, who, as I mentioned, was 47 on my list. And at this point last year, Armbruster was a consensus top 30 prospect who a lot of people, ourselves included, thought might have a shot at getting to the major leagues last season. And that didn't happen because his numbers in Norfolk were pretty bad. And save for a stretch around July where he did seem to find a groove and pitch pretty well, it was a struggle for him throughout the year. 7.54 ERA, a 6.16 FIP. What was odd, though, and this really left us scratching our heads, by most underlying metrics, his fastball was better last year than it had ever been before. The stuff plus was good. The fastball velocity was ticking up a little bit, but yet it seemed like in his bad starts, what would happen was that hitters would pounce on the fastball early. And then the secondaries, he just couldn't get him over for strikes, or he wasn't hitting the right parts of the zone. And next thing you know, he's given up 5 to 7 runs over the first 3 innings of the game. I kept him on my list for the simple fact that he is still probably going to go back to AAA this year. And if he gets off to a good start, he's right back in that conversation of arms who could contribute in the near term to the major leagues. The other thing is that I wonder, with the fastball velocity increase, I'm really curious to get your guys' thoughts on this. With the fastball velocity increase, is there a possibility that maybe Armbruster goes to the bullpen? He's been really durable throughout his career, but maybe there is a case now that if he's not going to stick as a starter at the higher level, you turn him loose in the bullpen and see how much better can that fastball get.
That's the answer. I mean, if there is an answer, that's going to have to be the answer, I feel like, just because, yeah, it's like you said, the fastball looked good, but if you literally cannot land any of your off-speed pitches for a strike, then hitters at this level, they're just going to sit on your fastball, and it doesn't matter how strong it is. For the most part, they'll be able to hit it. So I think he just needs to focus on, and watch, I'll be completely wrong, and he'll just come back out and have like a 3 ERA over 150 innings this year in AAA. But I think he should just pick the 1 or 2 off-speed pitches he feels most comfortable with, pair that with the fastball, try to ramp it up out of the bullpen, maybe multi-inning reliever. But yeah, I think all hope is not completely lost. I mean, it's again, just like Tavera, it's kind of a wash year, but it didn't help that he had a 59.1% left on base percentage. That's pretty bad. So he didn't get any favors from the relievers coming in behind him either. So, I think it was a little bit of bad performance mixed with bad luck led to a season with a 7.54 ERA. I don't think we're going to see that again. But yeah, I think bullpen or bust could be in the near future.
Yeah, so frustrating. And I'm pulling up quickly while this is pulling up. Actually, I think I was talking off air a couple weeks ago how I was, all the prospects we've had on the show, I'm trying to start a collection. I'm not big into like baseball card stuff anymore, but I'm trying to get like autographed cards of everyone we've had on the show. And we've had Armbruster on the show, so I did pick up this nice, sweet little Justin Armbruster autograph card. So I'm not just being optimistic in hopes that has value one day, but all that to stall so this would load. I pulled up Armbruster's card last year. This from TJ Stats on Twitter, great follow, of course, and all of his fun apps that he has. And yeah, you look at his stuff, the fastball, 18 inches of induced vertical break. It's a 60 grade offering, a 106 stuff plus. His overall repertoire had a 102 stuff plus grade. He's got the cutter graded out as an above average offering. The sweeper slider is an average offering. Like, he's got multiple pitches. And I think the slider was something that he introduced after he got drafted. Or maybe it was the slider that was dominant in college, and that was, the idea that maybe it could be a fastball slider reliever type guy. Either way, yeah, I think a move to the bullpen could do a lot of good. The data is there. Like, the stuff, I think, is there for him to be successful at the next level. We'll see. They left him unprotected in the Rule 5 draft. He didn't get picked. I'm assuming they left him, they protected him in the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft. Otherwise, of course, he would have been selected in that phase. we'll see what happens this year. He's off to a good start in spring. It's spring training. Again, we just talked with Steve Molesky, and spring stats mean nothing, but he has 2 2/3 scoreless innings, no hit innings this spring. I don't know. It was still just, we talked about him a lot last year, and I think I still never like fully developed my thoughts about Armbruster and what I saw because of how good he was in 2023 and how it just seemed to collapse last year. And what does it all mean? But I do agree that probably you move him into a bullpen role and you could potentially see him in the major leagues at some point this year, I think.
Prospect of a completely different type, another outfielder here who ranked 47th on Nick's list, Douglas Hodo III. Hodo was drafted by the Orioles out of Texas in 2022 in the 6th round, and he came into pro ball with a reputation as an excellent defensive outfielder who ran well. And over the first year and a half of Hodo's career, the player we saw was basically a outfielder who played all three positions really well, could steal bases, draw a lot of walks, but there just wasn't much to the bat. Then all of a sudden, last year at Aberdeen, he got on a hot streak that seemingly never stopped. He ended the year at Bowie, had a nice run in the Arizona Fall League, and overall 16.7% walk rate. Now, that did come with a high strikeout rate in the regular season of 28.3%, but Hodo also belted a career high 9 home runs while posting a 128 WRC plus. That was enough for him to rank 47th on Nick's list. He came very close to mine, and in the end, I just didn't find the room for him. But Nick, I've covered some of the big points with Hodo. What are your thoughts on him as a prospect at this point? Do you think that what we saw last season is a sign that there's another gear to him?
I think last year was who he is. I don't think there's much more ceiling or another gear there. But the reason I threw him in there in the back end of the list, and this is where I always kind of struggle with my list, like, do I throw some of the younger guys with higher ceilings who are like super wild cards, or do I play it safer with a guy like Doug Hodo? And that's why I threw Hodo in a top 50 spot, just because I do think that last year was his first full healthy year in pro ball, and he was very good. He had a combined 128 WRC plus across 2 levels. 51 for 58 in stolen base attempts. Like the raw stolen base numbers with the minor leaguers, they're fun to look at, but I really pay attention to their success rate. I think that tells you a lot more. And Hodo was very successful when he decided to steal. So I think their speed, you mentioned the defense. He is a very good defender out in center field, can play all 3 outfield spots. Don't know exactly how strong the arm is. Don't remember a lot of highlights from him defensively, but I think this is a guy who, he doesn't have any trade value to the Orioles, but you keep him in the organization as, quality AAA depth until he enters, minor league free agency. For a 6th round pick, I think if that's his career trajectory, that's a massive win and a pretty good career there.
Yeah, honestly, I'm getting like Hudson Haskin vibes from Hodo. I feel like similar type of player. Obviously, Haskins has kind of stalled out, maybe mostly due to injuries, but I just feel like 40 extra base hits, 51 stolen bases, good defense in the outfield, right-handed hitter who's just scrappy. He's going to go out there and be your uncle's favorite baseball player when he goes to a Bowie Bay Sox or a Chesapeake Bay Sox game this year. But there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's incredible depth to have. I feel like in the second half or even 2026, 2027, he's going to be that right-handed hitting outfielder that's just sitting there in AAA Norfolk waiting for an opportunity if there's an injury and you need a 4th or 5th outfielder. Obviously, got a lot of those guys on their way up, but can't hurt that just, wait for that opportunity to knock. Maybe he could be this year's Billy Cook and raise his value enough to be part of a prospect trade at the deadline for a Patrick Riley type of pitcher. I don't know if he's quite to that level, but I think it was an incredible season for him. Great comeback based off of, being injury prone the first couple of years and not having the greatest numbers maybe because of that. But it was a great year for him, and hopefully he can keep it going and see what happens.
That's a good point, Bob, especially as Hodo enters his last season before he is Rule 5 eligible for the first time. So something to consider there. Now, speaking of injury prone, Jake Cunningham ranked 49th on Bob's list. And Cunningham is a player we have talked about a lot since he was drafted by the Orioles in 2023. You might remember that at the time, then director of draft operations, Brad Seelick, called Cunningham a tool shed. And as a kind of high ceiling outfielder out of UNC Charlotte, albeit one with a little bit of an injury history, he was a guy that was getting a lot of eyeballs coming into the system. He had a nice summer with Delmarva and a very limited sample size out of the draft, and seemed poised to have a big year there in 2024 for his full season debut. Unfortunately, Cunningham missed a lot of time because of injuries when he was with Delmarva, and when he was on the field, really struggled at the plate, hitting just 208 with a near 32% strikeout rate and a 91 WRC plus. However, the Orioles gave him a surprising late season promotion where he went to high A Aberdeen, and while we didn't see a lot of power there, the hit tool was much better. He then went to Arizona Fall League, got off to a good start, but appeared in just a handful of games before not appearing again. There was no public word as to why that happened. We can only guess that it was an injury, but again, until we learn more, not entirely sure why Cunningham appeared in just 6 games in the AFL before his time there ended. We know that with Cunningham, when he is healthy, you go back to his college days, he's one of those players that flashes a little bit of everything, looks like he could stick in center field, and a high athlete guy, but one who has struggled with injuries in the last few years. Bob, I know that Cunningham has kind of gone up and down your list since he came into pro ball, but you held on here with their second to last spot. What do you see from Cunningham going into 2025?
I can't quit the tool shed. No, this was, just for the record, this was before the latest international signing period. So if you look at my current list, he is no longer in the 50. But before that, I just still tantalized by the upside. It's almost like John Rhodes light. Like, he's got the athleticism, he's got the raw power, seemingly the defense, the arm, if he's healthy. He's shown flashes of power. I just feel like he's a guy that if he could stay healthy and put it all together, there's something there. Like, it's not like they drafted him for no reason. So maybe just holding out hope that he can start to put it all together in 2025.
Yeah, I want to know what the injury was or what happened in the Arizona Fall League. That's the biggest thing for me. I honestly don't know if he's healthy or not right now. Is he going to start the year on the minor league IL list? We have no idea, but he's the most frustrating just because, like you mentioned, his start with Delmarva right after he was being drafted was very good. The numbers may have not been eye-popping, but watching him, like, robbing a home run, his first home run at the plate going opposite field, like, this is a premier athlete at the college level. He was very much worth the pick, and it's a fantastic idea to take a shot on him and bring him into the organization. But it just, the injuries continue to pile up there. And we don't know what his current status is. But then he goes to the Arizona Fall League and he has those 5-6 games where he's hitting off the charts. And I know offensive stats are through the roof in the Arizona Fall League, but still, it's to see an inexperienced bat like that perform as well as he did was promising. And then it's just immediate nothing. So, yeah, he's still a guy that I think, as long as he's healthy, he did get promoted to high A. So I think as long as he's healthy and on the field, I think he's worth paying attention to. But I do think, he's 23 years old now. I don't know when he turns 24, but he's got to get it going, like, immediate. He's got to hit the ground running, or he's going to get passed pretty quickly in this organization.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go now to the final player to earn a best of the rest designation from us, and that is catcher Anyudis Mordon, who ranked 50th on Bob's list. Mordon, in his first full year of pro ball, showed what makes him an interesting prospect, a catcher who, with a loud power tool, who also draws his fair share of walks. Now, that's going to come with a lot of strikeouts, and there are questions about whether or not he can make enough contact consistently to take advantage of that power as he moves up through the minor leagues. All of that said, Mordon was good enough to earn a late-season promotion to High A Aberdeen, where he will presumably begin the 2025 season. I have to say that Mordon's power is a pretty loud tool, and it alone makes a case for him making our top 50, especially if he is able to stick behind the plate. But as I just covered a little bit there are some definite risks with him. So, Bob, kind of give us your assessment of where Mordon stands at this point and how you see him performing going forward.
Yeah, I like Michael Hernandez better than him, or not Michael Hernandez. Who am I thinking of? Miguel Rodriguez. Very similar names. I like Miguel Rodriguez better, at least because I think he has a better chance of sticking behind the plate long term, and I just think a better overall offensive game. But Anutis Mordon can impact the baseball. Like, that is definitely there. That is a rare quality from a catcher. He's an offensive minded catcher. If he can stick there, maybe he's a first base down the line guy, but if he can just, make more contact, a little less swing and miss to his game, impact the ball more often, I think there's something there. He's 20 years old, so he's still very young. I just think someone that has the power that he has at his age, had 8 home runs in 2023, 13 last year, 29 extra base hits total. That's a guy you're going to keep around, and hopefully he can, cut down on the swing and strike rate. The plate discipline could go up as the strikeouts go down, the swing and miss, then you got a hitter.
You talk about Doug Hodo being your uncle's favorite player when they go to a Chesapeake game. When your uncle goes to an Aberdeen game, Anutis Mordon is not going to be his favorite player. But it's the home run trot is the thing I'm talking about. He takes his sweet old time going around the bases, but the thing with Mordon, I agree the power is for real. I need more data points on him to feel confident. Like, what is he putting up against, velo? Can he handle high velo fastballs? What's the bat speed like? I imagine there's probably concerning numbers when you look at some of the rest of his stats, but with Mordon, I just see somebody who, as he gets higher in the organization, he's going to strike out more. And I just see him really struggling. If he sticks behind the plate, then that's obviously going to help. Because if he's a 220 hitter who pops double-digit home runs, he's going to carve out a long career as a depth catcher in pro ball. But also not entirely confident in his, defensive scouting report. So I think with Mordon, like if I knew better, like what does the organization view him defensively? How do they view him defensively? And some other data points that we don't have access to, I'd feel better about ranking him. But just going off the eye test, I think I just see a guy who's going to struggle when he gets like up to AA. Like, is this going to be it for Mordon? And if it is, though, there are 10 other quality catchers right behind him coming through this organization. Catching is not a position that the Orioles are lacking when it comes to prospect depth.
That is for sure.
Yeah, Nick, your thought process was kind of the same as mine with Mordon. And to give a little bit more background into my list and my process, there were 3 catchers up for consideration for my final spot on the top 50. And it was Mordon, Miguel Rodriguez, and Silas Ardway. Now, if I wanted to go purely on who am I most confident in reaching the major leagues, I would have picked Ardway because the glove is going to get him there. But is he going to have a steady career as a backup catcher in the major leagues, or is he going to be an Austin Wynns type where he's mostly AAA depth but gets major league time with bad teams? Mordon has the wildest tool in the whole bunch with his power, and I like the walk rate, but I have a lot of concerns about whether or not he can stick behind the plate, and the bat just isn't going to carry at first base if it stays the way it is now. So in the end, I settled on Rodriguez, who I thought was a more well-rounded hitter than Mordon. And while the defense is not as good as Ardway's, for being a younger catcher, it's pretty good. And most reports that we have available to us publicly suggested he can stick behind the plate. So I landed on Rodriguez, but there was, consideration for those 2 other players. And I think very logical thought process could have led to Mordon going on my list over Rodriguez or Ardway going on, which I think would have knocked both of them out of the top 50. Yeah,
I think that's the perfect thought process and pretty much agree spot on. I just gave Mordon the nod over Ardway because I don't know. I like the power hitters, I guess.
And for that does it for this look at the best of the rest for our top 50. And keep an eye on these players throughout the season, because at any point they could jump onto our top 50. And as I mentioned, not just make it on, but really move their way up the list pretty far. So keep an eye on these players. And of course, if you have not read or listened to our top 50, go back and find last week's episode, or go check out oriolesontheverge.substack.com. Nick wrote up full reports for all 50 players that were ranked. I wrote a follow-up article highlighting some of the big takeaways from the list, some of the big themes that help give the Orioles farm system a lot of depth, even as some of the top prospects either graduate or are traded. Bob, Nick, and I will be back next week to cover all the latest news in Birdland. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, as I just mentioned, oriolesontheverge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up to become a member today. You can join for as little as $3, have access to Patreon exclusive channels in our Discord chat, and bonus coverage throughout the season from Bob, Nick, and myself. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.